Welcome back. You're watching Sokoni here on Morning Prime, where we take a keen look on the current state of play of our economy. The new cabinet's nominee will be taking reins, awaiting, of course, the approval of Parliament. And today also is a big day, remember, where the President will be holding or addressing the bicameral House today. So we eagerly await to hear from his speech how he will, or what he's actually looking forward to doing for Kenyans, especially when we are facing the economy that is really tanking and contracting right now, not only because of physical policies and inflation, but also the reality that is in the world right now. Everyone is facing the high rates of inflation everywhere. So how do we also, on our side, try to cushion ourselves, preparing for the Great Recession that is also coming, right? This is what some of the big papers are saying and warning, the world that there is a recession which is coming, and we need to cushion and prepare ourselves as a country. I'm holding court this morning with James Breyer, who is the chair of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Authority. Also, we have with us Bill Okero, who is a businessman and politician, former chair of the Senate, that is the Finance Committee in the Senate, and also the former Senator of Mandera. We have with us as well Professor KTN Iraki, who is an associate lecturer, School of Business at the University of Nairobi. Also, we have the immediate former chair of Kenya School of Government. This is Professor Geturo Wanaina, who is also a lecturer at the School of Business, University of Nairobi. The question we're tackling, of course, is, yes, these dockets that we are having with new faces right now, and what to expect from them. According to some of the dailies, also hurdles of integrity are along the way and hanging ominously over their heads. How will that really pan out? Will they be passed through or get a clean slate and the pass muster as far as Parliament is concerned? That is what we are tackling this morning, and a raft of other issues as well that we'll be looking at internationally. Before we took a short break, we are looking on hearing from you, Professor KTN Iraki. You wanted to weigh in on what the Big Four agenda was. What is a breakaway? Or is it just similar? You'd finished, isn't it?
No, yeah. Just bringing it home.
Yeah, we got it. We got it. Let's hear from KTN Iraki.
I think I'd alluded to that earlier when I was saying that if you look at what President Uhuru Kenyatta did, he followed what President Mwai Kibaki was doing.
With the Vision 2030.
Vision 2030.
Yes.
And I expect President William Ruto to follow on that. Digital economy is also mentioned in Vision 2030, but different. Business process offshoring is very close to that, but now bringing in the creative part of it. So I like that continuity, that you can move from one regime to the next and continue the policies instead of throwing them away and starting afresh. Because that's the problem we have been facing with the CDF in the counties. If I become an MP, I throw away all the projects of the previous MP and start afresh. So a lot of projects, a lot of money is wasted. So we need that continuity. Now, I need to mention about the cartoon you put there, because I think it's a very pertinent issue. About MCAs going to Naivasha, going to Mombasa, going to Dubai. I know one county that went to Singapore in 2013 to benchmark about potato growing in Singapore.
In Singapore?
Yes. I'll not tell you which country for security reasons. But I think there's a party mentality that is cropping up in this country. I don't understand why people who are over 60 years are celebrating their birthdays, and that is news in the media. So I think instead of facing the problem in this country, we are preferring to celebrate. Go to Naivasha, go to Mombasa, celebrate your birthday and so on. And I think that's why
celebrating the birthday from the government institutions? Or
no, even individuals. It's not just about MCAs going to celebrate, even individuals. We are very concerned about celebrations, having birthday parties and so on. That's what I think what we need to do in this country is we stop electing MPs and we stop having MPs being paid. We have volunteers. We ask why now you to be a volunteer MCA, a volunteer MP, a volunteer senator. People who don't pay, people who volunteer, people who have time and energy to take care of this country. Because it appears people are becoming MPs and MCAs.
But that is very utopian.
We can be unique. Because what is happening now is what an economist, Thorsten Veblen, predicted 100 years ago about conspicuous consumption. Why do you want to go to Mombasa? There is no evidence that if you go to Mombasa, you think better than if you are in Kariobangi. There's no better evidence that you make better decisions when you go to Dubai than when you go to...
But it's about the ambience. You get space.
We are scorers.
Why are you?
We are scorers that you can even think in a toilet. So I don't know why you are bringing those issues that you must go to a certain place to think. And I think that is old mentality. That we must move from point A to B.
But actually, Raki, there's a reason why even the CEO, you have such a spacious office, right? So that and they always say when you have all this clutter around you, crammed in a small space, even your thinking capacity is affected psychologically.
If the problem is that, go and sit in a forest. There's a lot of space, or in Nairobi National Park, and think there. I think there's a mentality we have inherited from elsewhere, that you must be in a certain place to come up with new ideas. You don't need to.
Actually, the truth is
that you want to make money by going to another county. You see, let me give you a good example. You know Nanyuki?
Yeah.
Nanyuki is on the border between Laikipia and Nyeri. If you cross the border by walking, you actually get a new per diem. So it's all a question of people being entrepreneurs.
It's a new per diem rating, so yes, which is different from Laikipia.
That is it. So we need people to start thinking in a different way.
We need to restructure this. And
let me explain that. But you know, there's something that he said which used to be there before. Even in this country, before the independence, service in Parliament used to be on voluntary basis during the colonial time.
Yes.
Even the House of Lords, that's how it started. It was on voluntary basis, although they're now being paid.
Who? I missed
House of Lords.
House of Lords,
yes. But today they're being paid allowances. There's no, times have changed. You know, cost of living for everyone. So it's not easy to get Professor Wainaina to just spend all his day
after retirement.
When he goes home, then he still needs to find some bread.
Absolutely.
But I think the point is Professor is making here, Iraqi is making that. Look, we can do better than all this extravagance, and this is what is happening. The extravagance. And by the way, Parliament or county assemblies copy the executive. The worst extravagance in the executive. Every small seminar for ministry, for a department, is held outside. They go to Mombasa. They're always in hotels. You go to a ministry, half the time they're in conferences and seminars and meetings. So this is where these other institutions also copy from, and this is why we've been saying for many years, and President Ruto has a chance to go for zero-based budgeting. He throws these printed estimates that we have today in the dustbin, and he gets his Minister for Finance, take a pen and pencil and sit down and draw a new budget. So that we base these things on the actual needs today.
Assessment.
Otherwise, what is happening is a provision that was made, a budget line, a vote, created in 1970, incrementally, it has been adjusted for. So there's a lot of inefficiencies and wastage. So everybody, when he's setting up his department or ministry, is copying what the rest are doing. So if in that ministry we have got so many different flowers, tea for breakfast, this and that, then I'll go and do a similar thing. So I think when you go take a pen and pencil and go through the government estimates, you will find billions in wastage. Billions.
But I think
I think that is where these guys need to.
I think you're right, but we can't blame it. And I think you have to understand the narrative. And I've been there for some time.
Yeah. Can I just ask Bill or something before you weigh in on that? Because you're talking about continuity, everyone is agreeing continuity. But also when we come to
Parliament...
I'm
not sure I'm agreeing on continuity. But
you're not on the same page.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Parliament as well, and I think this is something that has been broached even before, we have very good legislations. They've gone through the rigmarole, in the final stage, and then they're dropped when we have the new entry of a new government and a new bicameral house, even from the Senate, even from the National Assembly. Then you begin the entire process again. How could we fashion that we have a transition where some of these compelling legislations that we've had from very good minds in Parliament, instead of going now through a regurgitation and beginning with the same process again to go through the rigmarole.
Even the legislations which have not been completed.
They've not been completed. Yes.
It's a standing order issue. This is the same thing. Diva, I'm telling you. We're simply copying what was happening in the Victorian times in the British system, so that Parliament, everything in Parliament is traditional. It's old British way of doing things. So that standing order simply says, if there is a bill, it has not been concluded and Parliament has adjourned, for the election, all those bills stand completely,
null and void.
Null and void.
So you have to.
Yes, you bring a motion today, it fails on the floor of the House. It says you can't bring it back again after 6 months. All of these things are things which are standing order, things which today the world has changed. There's a lot of dynamism in the way people operate. The world has moved on. I think there's certain things that you need to change, which you do not need to go by the traditional way of doing things. And this is, I agree with you. These are something very simple. And they can be amended through the standing orders, because they waste a lot of your time. You have a bill, you have done, you have worked on it, you spend months, and you spent millions, and you cannot. And those are another city allowances they need to be. Of course, their cost, the time, effort, a lot of things have gone into it. So the standing orders, I think they should, and I want to urge Parliament to start looking at the standing orders critically, really, and remove some of those traditional standing orders provisions which do not really add value in today's world. Where you have to value knowledge, you have to value time, you have to value every effort that has been put in, and not simply, standing orders. Parliament is about more, not about substance, but about procedure. And I think today you need to be more concerned about the substantive value of things you are doing, rather than the formula and the procedure and the process and those kind of things. And I think we need to change that.
I think there's something Bilo has said,
which is going just here from you before we come to
just a quick one that has crossed my mind. That radical arrangement where you are saying throw away this budget, whatever, and sit down and list what you critically need to do to bring back this country to mainstream operation.
It's sort of a cost-benefit analysis of the current state of play.
Yes, what we are in, where we are in, and that's probably what
Treasury has been
best.
So this budget we've been having from Treasury is sort of a cookie cutter
that
has been passed on through generations.
Just
there's flowers. You have your clock. The ways that also we have the clocks with the judiciary and the regalia. So and your briefcase. Copy paste, just adjust the numbers as well. A complete overhaul of the entire system.
I think we need to understand the budgeting system in government. Budgeting system. And if you look now, really the whole treasury and planning, they are working what will drive this country the next 5 years. And the things to be done. That's where the budget comes from. So you look at the 3 pillars. You look at the socio, economic and the political. What are the key things which need to be done? Taking cognizance of SDGs.
Is this the ideal that you're talking about, or this is what is happening?
They go through that process. Right now, I can tell you, they are working on the manifesto of Kwanzaa. And they'll be told, these are the things we want to fast track. I'll come to that. But the point I wanted to add, we must put our shoes in the public service and understand it. I've been there. And remember one time I was in the World Bank, and here is a work to be done, and the staff is saying, we're on 2nd floor in Jogo House. They said, we must go to Meru. Then I asked, why? We can do it here. Nobody talked to me. It never happened. So later on, somebody calls me, when we go to Meru, it's per diem.
Yeah.
And it worked. Now, what you have to understand, there's a certain cadre in government, their salary is miserable. It's unheard of. And the moment they get out, they can do something. It can be cascaded, it can be looking in tiers, in the sense that people out there probably they don't need to do all that because of the kind of facilities they have. They have a car, they have a security. But you're talking of a person in government. If you look at their salary, a pay slip, you think, you actually can see why their remuneration, why they want to get out. They get up at the end and they can do something. To me, that is a very critical thing which actually have this. Therefore, what am I saying? We need to look at the remuneration of our public, particularly the work cadre. And when you get CSCs getting out, it doesn't make sense. In fact, when they come to the meeting, they don't help the meeting at all. Because people don't talk freely. Or a PS comes. Leave them, let them go work. What we used to do, we'd go to Naivasha or Baringo. I remember one time in Baringo. But we make sure we work up to about 11 in the night. So when we come back, we have a product. But they have also benefited. Now, why is our pay so in this country? Because of our productivity. We need to step back. And the reason why I'm saying I'm not following the narrative, you can say 5, 6 things, but look at the resource envelope we have. It can't do them. So you look at the focus on the ones, if I invest in this, it will bring me 5 times as opposed to this. That narrative, and Dungo in my mind has that capacity, that intellect to do. And they will focus on this. We need an acceleration program, which will be sustained. Because while we err, and I've said this before, we are not feeding our people. The worst thing can happen in this country, in the world, is to have food riots. That's the worst thing can happen. You can't stop it. But you have an opportunity. But our budget, and I hear Murray here, our budget will not allow us to do a lot of things.
Right. Murray seems not to be in agreement with what is being
I don't
espoused.
agree fully. I don't fully agree.
We don't agree with what you say. No.
I want to just let me just say on this.
On what? He's talked on
No, that our budget cannot allow us to feed the country. No, that is not acceptable.
And not even that.
And we keep saying this, Prof.
It is not really a resource issue. Resources are there.
It's not a resource issue.
Yeah.
It's how to use the resource. We don't have a resource issue. And I think we have repeated here many times. And I want anybody to challenge me. The budgets are going to be read, and you can confirm, Professor knows, that we collect more revenue than the entire 5 other East African countries combined.
Yes.
Our budget is 3.3 trillion. That is $30 billion. You say you have a resource issue feeding the country. No, it is about priorities. And this is why the government, from the time of Kibaki up to now, they have been, although it's there in law that we must use program-based budgeting, they have been avoiding treasury, guys. You know the way the budgeting is done, executive, everybody wants a situation where if I come to your county and the director says, I want a road here, the president should be able to say, okay, can you barabara happen? Those kind of things. So program-based budgeting would tie the government down to specific linkages between specific programs, which are strategic priorities of the government, and the spending plans. You tie the two so that whatever you're spending is based on the strategic priorities of the government. And at the end of the day, there will be outcomes, that can be, measured to ensure that you have achieved this or that. You cannot spend money. But, government, that's why we are saying this budgeting system they have today, you go through the printed estimates, you'll be shocked. Because I was there. There was a time we refused in 2005, when I was the Shadow Finance Minister, to pass the budget until they would give us itemized budget as required by law. Because itemized would mean if the president says, if the budget says there will be 300 billion for infrastructure or for roads, then the list of the roads with the specific amounts of money, per kilometer, where all those things will be provided for there, so that you can now seek, and even in terms of even ensuring fairness across the country, you can even check. But when I tell you, no, I want 300 billion for roads.
Yes, and it's not really itemized.
It's not itemized. You cannot hold the government to account. And this is the challenge in many of our budgeting systems. The things are not...
The opaqueness.
The opaqueness.
Let's hear from Murray. I will come to you. Murray had a frustration. I can see he's doing
because Wainaina is trying to condone what has been going on. Status quo. We continue encouraging these per diems. This country needs radical surgery. Remove all those comfort zones. If you are saying you are in civil service,
but where to begin? I think it will be the place.
No.
Who really sets the per diem? Is it the Public Service Commission?
Wait, Dibal. Unajua mimi mzee saa ingine lazima uache thoughts zangu zina flow. Wainaina,
if you are what you don't say.
No,
but continue.
No, you are my senior though. But what I'm saying is, we cannot get different results from doing the same thing over and over. If you feel you're in civil service and you're being underpaid, talker, go and do business or go elsewhere. But if you use that per diem as a reason for us to say that you're being frustrated as a head of department because people are saying we must go to Meru to do this preparation of a certain document, it is wrong. We're just condoning. We are hoping that somehow miraculously it'll change. What President Ruto should do is, like you said, below, take a fresh new page, write what are our priorities, how much are they going to cost us, Professor Ndongo, how much do we have in terms of what we can collect. And it's actually not that we are not collecting enough money, it's that we are misusing a lot of money. That's the truth. We need to get back to financial discipline, where we are saying we need to have, and it stems back to your own house, Wainaina. If you have urgent things will always scream at you. Urgent things is when you see a nice shirt you want to buy, but your school fees and your house rent will not scream at you, but it must be paid. So we must get our priorities right. Get what must be done, done. At the moment, we are faced with a situation where we have a crisis of this drought. Now, can we focus on that? Stop thinking about infrastructure for now. Let's think about survival of the Kenyans and focus our resources where it is most needed, i.e. food security. Once people are secure, then they can become healthy. Once they're fed, they can become healthy, they can go to manufacturing, and that's where all these big 4 agenda or big 5 agenda are all interlinked.
That one I agree with you.
Yeah,
let's focus on food. That's what I agree with you.
Get our priorities right.
Can I be an honest broker between the two? In fact, next time don't put them together because I'm fearing now.
No, he's my senior.
Professor Wainaina's argument should not just be thrown away. People work very well when they are incentivized. The child did not build the expressway because they love us, because they can get some money from there. So people who work for the civil service should be given incentives. And I think it is unfair for me to give a salary that cannot take care of my basic needs from rent to
That's the
school
point
fees and
I'm
so on.
making, excellent.
So one of the things that the new government should do is to make sure that they give the civil service enough incentives. I'm not saying they be paid $1 million per month, no, but enough incentives, because any economist will tell you that we react to incentives. But there's a bigger issue here.
So is there a disparity also? Because we have incentives which is on the top notch, the higher tier.
Yes.
We are talking about the tiers as well, the low cadre of the stuff that we have in the public service.
There is.
So how do we harmonize and rationalize this
I'll give you a good
incentives?
I'll give you a good example.
How do we begin?
I'll give you a good example. Compare what an MP is paid and what I'm paid by the government, and ask me who works more between me and an MP, but who is paid more. So there must be some equity. And that's what SRA has been trying to do, but has not done enough.
But here's a sliced community.
Yes, but there's a big issue.
The entire constituency.
But we must look at everybody.
Maybe they look at it that way.
Yeah,
We must look at
How much of the
everybody.
traveling do you do, or do you have to travel?
To go to Mombasa and Dubai?
No. To meet the constituents.
In the
I mean,
constituents.
when Bilo was
you can
senator
meet them
in Mandera, how many kilometers do you cover to see?
Let me finish my argument. But there's a bigger issue here, and I think all of you are raising it here, that we haven't had enough innovations in politics. So if you look at the judicial system, we got a lot from the UK system. We are still wearing wigs and so on. That's why I was very happy to see the president leading from an iPad. So we also got a constitution from the US. So we don't have homegrown innovations in politics. And I wish we had an M-Pesa moment in politics so that we do things differently. And that's what Murevi is saying. Can we do things differently? And I think the new regime has a chance to do that. Whether it is in budgeting, whether it's the way we run the police service, whether it's the way we run the education system, we have a chance to start afresh.
Yeah.
Because old ideas will not always work.
No.
And that is the question he is asking, who is willing to try new things? And one of the best ways to make people change is actually give them incentives.
And this watershed moment.
And when you talk about, one sec, when I was somewhere, I had the opportunity at the CEO, health, I was actually getting, you know how you have employees, because you are CEO, your ceiling is this high. Your ceiling is I stopped that. We're all getting the same amount of health. Travel, we're getting the same amount. In fact, that somebody walking or matatu should get more than you because you have a driver. Small things you can do.
Incentives.
I worked in health and I worked in transportation, and I can say the people were different. And I had that opportunity. I talked to the board, and the board said yes. We went there. If you go to the board meeting, as a CEO, we were being paid. And they said, why are you paying us? And this is why we work. Whatever, you have attended a meeting. We stopped that. So there's certain things you can, and I'm really concerned, even actually today, virtually about a month, how much we have spent, even the current government, in some of it, which in my view, could have been done differently. It's amazing.
You know, Dibal, I saw something just recently when the president traveled to the US and to UK for the funeral. The whole entourage was 10 people. What a pleasure. I've also traveled, and I'm saying this, the full glare of cameras. I traveled to China with 88 businessmen when I was in the chamber, and 300 government officials.
300 government officials.
Yes. So this is where
And we've had a
President Ruto
problem
must
even
now
from the
deal
international
with that
community with the
problem.
entourage from Kenya. You know, that there are too many.
Yes,
we
said that before. And if the president wants to save this country, make your delegation lean and targeted so that you go with only people who must. And if you have anything to go by, then carry more businessmen. If you're going for a mission, because they are the people who are going to hunt down opportunities for the country. But if you take government officials full play load, and we, the private businessmen, pay for ourselves to go for these missions, it beats a business. We are hunting. We should go with the best warriors, i.e. our businessmen who go and bring back opportunities. What are these government officials? And I'm sorry, I say this with due respect. So many government officials who really have no business other than earning per diem. The president must address these issues very seriously. A lean delegation that has the Minister for Finance because we're going to this, or Minister for Agriculture because we're going to Israel, or Minister for, and a small team, technical team to take down the.
Let me give an example of that. You know, in 2013, when I was in Senate, President Kibaki, President Uhuru, President Uhuru trip to China when he was going to sign for the 5 billion for the SGR. He was accompanied by 150 people.
Yes.
And among the 150 people, there were 20 of us who were legislators, governors, senators, members of parliament. And when we were now going for the meetings, in many of the meetings, we were actually locked out because the Chinese government could only arrange for a certain number of people.
Yes, 28.
Yeah. So many of us, we could not access.
You went shopping.
We could not attend any of the meetings because they can't provide for 100 people. This is a meeting.
And how long were you
Prime
there?
Minister.
How long were you there? For a week?
Oh yeah, must have been a week, not less. But you can imagine that there's a meeting between the president and the prime minister, and the foreign minister could only organize through the protocol for a certain number of people. So the rest of us, we leave the hotel, when we go there, we go back again on the bus. And this happens. I mean, you know, but
so they're joy riders actually.
So you look at it, annually we are spending now. National government spends about 25 billion on travel. The county governments, even during the lockdown, you remember that story of the county government?
Yes.
They spent 12 billion on travel when there was a lockdown in 2020. and so when there's no lockdown, it's double that.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's madness, the amount of money we're spending. All of it is because of this thing about, there's this incipient culture of status and class in this country.
Yes, correct.
When we leave here, none of us would want to go and take a cup of coffee in the small little kiosk. You want to go to Java, you want to go to some
Serena.
you know, some nice. So the members of parliament feel they're also entitled to certain status in society. If the PS and the ministers are enjoying, you know, a certain level of status or whatever, when they also want to be in that level. So this thing has created, you know, has permeated the entire society. It has gone down Paka Uko, MCAs and everyone. And this is what is creating all this. And I think that's why I'm saying, if you go through our estimates of budgets, or whether it's national or county, you'll be shocked. There's so much inefficiency.
I think the point we are making here, there's a whole element when you do all this, leadership becomes very important. And leadership is what you do. There's a very interesting article, I think it's called Quote Digest. It appears in if you're on Yahoo or Gmail. And there's somebody have been writing about a certain country. What's good about this country? What's bad about this country? And it all boils to their leadership. You see the weekend, the fella is there with a bike, the seller is all around there. So people can relate with that person. The expenditure is minimal. I do agree.
Right.
The point is coming, and I think I want to make my point clear, Bill and Moreu Dongo. It's not a question, and I do remember when Mother Karua was being interviewed as a deputy, there's enough resources.
There is enough resources.
It's perhaps how we prioritize those resources. I'm still saying, even that revenue you get, you can prioritize it. And that's what we do.
That's
because things to be done are too many. But you prioritize which one will bring more impact in terms of how you invest.
You deal on important things, and leave out the urgent ones, because urgent ones are not necessarily important.
Yes.
I think it's important for us to go back to that. Rent, school fees, waits for you. Whether you like it or not, you'll have to pay. But it's this need for buying this shirt that you have seen because you think it's the last one that's being made. And that's how this government, unfortunately, sometimes the people behave. And critically important, and what Bilo has said is, in certain meetings, such as where you were, Bilo, the critical players who are supposed to be participating in that event are actually locked out. So that you see people just sitting there in a meeting, and they'll come out of there and say, tulikuwa kwa mkutano na president, but doing nothing, absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So what we need is really a lean team that targets certain predictable results.
What Magafuli did.
Yes.
What Magafuli did.
Now,
yes.
if you look at, sorry, let me just bring this home. If you look at somebody like Paul Kagame, President Paul Kagame, travels with only people who are critical to that meeting. And anybody else who goes there must explain why they are in that.
No busybodies, yes.
No busybodies. Remember President Moi, one time, the late President Moi, used to travel with a plane load of people until Richard Leakey was made chief secretary to the cabinet, head of public service. And he said, what are you guys going? They were all thrown out, and then they went to President Moi and said, hey, Muzungu Liweka Hapo has left us out. He said, let the Muzungu do his work. We need a Muzungu kind of mindset, where President Ruto says, if we are not bringing value to this,
my brother, we have the heads. Don't have a Muzungu mindset. We have the heads as Kenyans.
I'm saying a Muzungu is that a Muzungu of that kind, with that mindset, where you are saying, do we need Wainaina in this meeting? No. We need only.
Why has it to be a Muzungu?
No, I'm saying a Muzungu. I'm just talking about Richard Leakey.
I told you some of these guys.
Richard Leakey came in there and changed came with a radical decision. If you're not needed, get out. I'm saying that Muzungu mindset kind of thing where you're saying, if you're not needed, and I'm referring to Richard, who was a Kenyan, as a Muzungu. They were saying, you Muzungu let hapa anatusumbua, because he was doing the right thing.
Thank you.
So
Thank you. No, I wanted just to, before I come to you, you have something to say, so that
yes.
I want just to broach this issue of, and you're the economist, you can help us, the degrowing of the economy, right? The growth of the economy, where sometimes you have the mentality that even as a company, for you have this expansionist sort of an agenda that you feel when you grow, you have to expand. We have to put many stores around the country so that we can seem to be scaling up as a business. We are growing. But I was reading somewhere, I think, a very interesting book by Paul Jarvis, The Company of One, that actually in degrowing yourself on where you know this is the ultimate that we're going to be making as a company. Even when you're trying to hit so much profit, this is what we can actually be plateauing on, so that we are steady over the years.
Correct.
You'll find many companies, you see, why have you kept small for all? But there's such an endurance over the years. But you find a small company is actually venturing into a market niche, and you want to expand and put stalls and grow. And then after the venture capital that you've been actually surviving on, when it's running dry, you can't support that particular business. So I wanted just to maybe broach that aspect of the degrowth of the economy. That the economy doesn't have to be on GDPs. You can actually just survive on, tunakulaga ugali, chai asubuhi na jioni. And then we maintain at that. The others, the money which will come over and above from that, you can actually save. This is what also Ruto is really calling on the country, that we don't have any savings.
Yeah.
Iraqi, we can begin with you.
I think that's a very interesting issue you are bringing. And there seems to be a new economic term, degrowth. But before I go to that, he talked about status. And I think status is really disturbing us in this country. For example, I am yet to see, and I want to see it in the new government, a GKI VITs. Why must we drive big cars? Why must we go to big hotels? Why can't we be humble? I think that's what I'm looking for. In the spirit of the heart of a nation, we need to be humble. Now, degrowth.
That is degrowth.
Yes, I think that those are very important questions.
Yes.
When I was going to Form 1 many years ago, I don't want to disclose my age for security reasons. I went to Nakuru. I went to Nakuru to a supermarket called Jirani's. When I went to Nakuru last 2 weeks ago, I found Jirani's is still there.
Yes, it is.
Many years ago, we got Nakumat.
Yes.
It grew very fast. It's not there.
It's not there.
And when I went to industrial area, I found a printing press called D.L. Patel, 1927.
Yes.
It is still there.
Still there. Yes.
So I think that's the argument you are coming.
Yes,
we
yes,
need
yes,
to start businesses that go over generations. If you look if you find out one of the reasons why German companies have done so well, it's not because of the German economy has done so well. It's not because of Volkswagen or this big company. It is those medium-sized companies, the so-called meterrads. So if we are not saying we stick there, and everybody has been talking about the Africa's missing middle, that's those medium-sized companies.
Yes.
So what we need to do is let's start the small business and let's expand them, but they should expand in a sustainable way. Remember, becoming a big corporation like Google and so on needs a lot of resources and a lot of skills. And if you don't have them by importing new skills or by going to diversity, then you find your company going bust. So I think it is good to have companies that are manageable. And as an entrepreneur, you must know when to pass over to the next generation. People can diversify. If you look at Google or other big companies, the original founders are still there, but it's run by different people. Put new skills, put new perspectives. And I remember hearing the other day somebody in South Africa saying something very revolutionary. I don't remember his name, that South Africa needs to, it's a very interesting term, they want hustle economy. I don't think he had read the UDA manifesto. But his argument was, if you look at the big companies, Walmart and so on, they only benefit a few people. But if you have we have many medium-sized companies, more people benefit. And I think we need to have that balance between the big corporations, the medium-sized, and the small corporations, or the small micro enterprises. So whatever you're calling the growth is probably what I would refer to as growth in a sustainable way. You scale up growth in a way that you can sustain. And I believe that the Asian companies in this country have done that very successfully. And maybe that's a model we need to borrow, or the German model of meterrads or the medium-sized companies.
Indeed.
I know you disagree with me.
Yeah, me.
No, him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why would I disagree with you?
You know, if you read, it was on the news also last night, IMF criticizing the UK of the United Kingdom over the tax cuts. It's a trickle down. They're criticizing the UK over the trickle down. That it's part of the reasons why the pound has slumped significantly. On this, so the story on this bottom thing is gaining momentum in many for whatever reasons. But this story on degrowth in Europe, of course, it means a different thing. There's a degrowth movement. It's been on for many years. These guys are always demonstrating, and when there's international trade meetings, and then for them it is about the sustainability of the climate. The way countries, the way we're trying to grow as countries, it's depleting resources, it's creating environmental problems, climate issue, resources, global resources being affected and so forth. For them, it means that, look, let us shrink the economies so that people live within certain life that does not result in wastage and inefficiencies. And what's happening in the materialistic sense in what's happening particularly in the rich countries, the rich getting richer and richer and richer, and the amount of resources and services and facilities used by the extremely rich, it's the main concern, I think, is in that movement, is that about that. But I think in our case, for a developing country, where people don't have access to basic services like water, like sanitation, like health, or even food. So the word, the growth would have a negative connotation. It would mean, the rest of us have reached somewhere, and let's stop there. But this is this disparity is something strange, by the way. It's happening. It's all over the world. America, they're spending trillions of dollars sending space rockets to Mars and everywhere, but within America you'll find millions of people who are poor, You know, if you read about them, you find millions, tens of millions of Americans who cannot put bread on the table, who are surviving on welfare, who are surviving on food kitchens, who are surviving on this and so forth. This inequality is because of these policies. This is the argument that, you know, IMF is raising now with UK, that these tax cuts will create more inequality and so forth, because you're allowing the rich who are making money not to pay the taxes. So I think in my view, I think we have to, the problem is not about the policy, the degrowth or whatever, but I think we have to be very careful that you know, we don't deny those people who do not have anything the opportunity to realize that growth, because for many years now, 10 years in a row, President Uhuru has been telling us our country has been growing by 6 to 7%. You know, the financiers last week was saying, look, we're very proud. We're living after having registered an average growth of 5.7 to 6% annually for 10 years.
But
we've grown the economy.
Governor said you don't need GDP.
But, and the governor said. So the issue is growth in which areas? You know, within the economy, they have different sectors. There's the elitist aspects of the sectors of the economy, like finance, like telecommunications, which are always growing. But there are those sectors of the economy, like agriculture, where 80% of the people are based, which are not doing very well. At best, they're doing 1 or 2% or 0 sometimes. So I agree that we need to the government, probably through policy, needs to check on some of the areas that do not add value but use a lot of resources, and this happens particularly in those developed countries. But in our rest of the country, where people still need to realize basic services, I think there's need for the government to still ensure that, because what is the growth is a measure of how much value and goods and services that have been produced. But
so I know that word is a sort of an oxymoron. It's not meaning that you really degrow. You scale down, right?
Yeah.
And this is a book. It's called The Company of One. If the director may just pick it up. It's not really focusing on the degrowing. I think the growth is just what I've just thrown in, just to make us think as well. But he's saying Company of One, why staying small is the next big thing for business, by Paul Jarvis there. And I like what he says here, that if I may just read a snippet of it. They're saying that the current paradigm teaches us that to make a lot of money or to achieve lasting success, we need to scale our businesses. As if large businesses are less prone to fail or to become unprofitable. Obviously not true. In fact, according to this view, before our emergent businesses are even off the ground, we need to create them with the sole purpose of growth and possibly eventual sale for a huge profit. This paradigm, however, is not rooted in truth, nor does it hold up to critical investigation. A study done by the Startup Genome Project, which analyzed more than 3,200 high-growth tech startups, found that 74% of those businesses failed, not because of competition or bad business plans, but because they scaled up too quickly. Correct. Growth as a primary focus is not only a bad business strategy, but an entirely harmful one. In failing, as defined in the study, these high-growth startups had massive layoffs, closed up shop completely, or sold off their businesses for pennies on the dollar. Putting down over profit as a strategy, however trendy as business advice, was their downfall. When the Kaufman Foundation and Inc. magazine did a follow-up study on a list of 5,000 fastest-growing companies 5 to 8 years later, they found that more than 2/3 of them were out of business, had undergone massive layoffs, and had sold below the market value, confirming the finding of the Startup Genome Project. And I can read on and on. At least you get the basic idea, sure. Right?
You know, let me, I think I wanted to weigh in on something about this degrowing economy. And if you ask me, Deval, I think, in my view, there are certain basic things that we need to get right. First of all, there is the idea of living within your means. That's the quickest one to degrow this economy. So that we say, if you can't afford a fuel guzzler, scale down to what makes sense to you, i.e. get the famous Passat. You know what? We were driven with small cars, made in India, small cars, they don't consume. But that is just basically living within your means. The second thing that we need to consider urgently is develop homegrown solutions. Just make your suit with the material you have, just made to measure, so that we have homegrown solutions that seek to really deal with the problems that we have. The third one I want to raise is about what President Ruto had started by saying that he would like, let's not have a premium figure or a general figure for everybody when it comes to paying of NHIF, so that it's graduated. A man like Debal, who earns 1 million shillings a month, I wish, is charged on pro rata basis. And the person who pays low, so that the ones who have, it's a way of equalizing that. The last one is to refocus on our priority as a country, so that even resources are also geared in the same direction. We refocus and
somebody's watching you on YouTube in Bangkok as we talk.
Yeah.
I have a son there. He's saying, I can see you on the YouTube. So the guy you out there.
We're in Bangkok. Thank you very much for watching us from Bangkok. Right, okay, let's turn our focus. I think we've beaten this down to the ground. We need just to focus also on the new Treasury Cabinet Secretary. You have something to say?
This issue of growth, degrowth.
The degrowth, yes.
I'm liking, like the way you twist our mind and you force us to think. Because when you talk of growth, you know what you're talking about. When you talk of degrowth, twist our mind. I think it's a very important area to focus on, because I think it has been tried elsewhere. I was finding out the other day, why has China done so well in the last 40 years? What was the magic? Because China became a modern nation in 1949. We became a modern nation in 63, 14 years difference. But many years later, we are so different. And one of them has been the foreign direct investment and trade.
Yes.
And when you talk about the hustle of fund, when you talk about the need to inject capital into this country, we are not talking about where it is coming, where it come from. And maybe we need to shift away from borrowing to people coming and investing in this country, because they bring technology, they bring new ideas, they bring new perspectives. And the reason why Nairobi County contributes 25% to Kenya's GDP, with only 70% of the population, is because of people bringing their capital here, bringing new perspectives, new thinking. So as we think about growth and degrowth, we must think about the most important ingredient in growth, which is new ideas. Because we have a problem of telling people to stay in the counties. We don't change the ideas. So we need to have people moving from one part of the world to the other, one part of the country to the other. That challenges their thinking.
That's why we need to go to Mombasa for the workshop.
No, that people go to Mombasa to go and do their own thing, not to change their thinking.
Yeah.
And the starting point would be our youngsters. Let them move from one country to the other. They will change their thinking. And very important, when we think about the growth, let's focus on the areas of the economy that have the highest returns. And studies have shown agriculture and livestock development have the highest returns.
There you are. I'll be saying that. I don't know.
That shows that. Yeah. But the problem is, it's not cool to be a farmer. Not cool to be.
Are we looking at the large-scale agriculture?
No.
The mechanized sort of agriculture.
We are looking at livestock and farming at subsistence level, so that if I have 1 acre of land, I can make it as productive as possible.
Right.
And let's not let's not. I don't know who said in this country that the only thing that is making our farms not productive is fertilizer. It's more than that. You have to think about where do you get water from, how big is the size, can you mechanize it, do you have the type to farm? Because people leave the farm once they grow up.
Water flows from the mountains down to the ocean.
Private areas.
We can look at the business daily, because I think very important as well. We saw yesterday announcements being made on Fuliza. And there is a very interesting story there. Ruto 6 deal with Safaricom to disburse cheap hustler loans. So this hustler fund that you're talking about can be disbursed through that particular channel. Safaricom. It will bring to bear the question of still the monopoly that we are talking about. We've been talking about the bundling and other telcos as well, Telcom, Airtel, Safaricom. If the government just chooses as it is against these other players to disburse, of course we can say they have the infrastructure as it is. The same has not been applied to, is it the expressway? Yeah, but you have to pay it through cash, because the government was greatly shy to give such services to just one farm, now that can be raking in money, when you're talking about competition, the spirit of, anti-competition.
I understand they've now allowed it, isn't it?
Right?
Yeah, they're now allowed.
They've now allowed, but before I think that was what that was. That was a question. From the business perspective, how would you receive this? And this is we have a very interesting cartoon also there. You have I'm the Big Brother now. Looking at the Standard the editorial page, I'm the Big Brother now.
First of all, I think this statement by the president at yesterday's function of Safaricom, I think he talked about using fintechs such as Safaricom, and he gave Safaricom as an example, but he doesn't. So he has not ruled out using the others. I think most probably they will use all the other platforms, the Airtel one.
Absolutely.
They're going to use all of them. And by the way, it's an easy way of disbursing money, because I know we've been in one of our my previous company where we were paying dividends to shareholders of large companies. So it will always using these M-Pesa things to, instead of, the way it used to be, you send the dividend checks, even if it's 100 shillings.
And you have to go to the bank.
You have to go to the bank. It's costly. Nothing. Those things are now, everything is done through this platform of fintech. So I think it will be cheaper, more efficient, because as long as your telephone number has been registered, and you have your own, that's why the focus on registration of phone numbers, the SIM cards, is critical, because then it will be like in Japan and many countries. I mean, your phone is everything. I mean, if you that's critical.
You're giving people. I think it's good to look economics from the consumer perspective. Yeah, give me a choice. That's the bottom line. We were somehow this guy on my left. And we are told we are being told to go this way. And the question was, what does the consumer of your service think? And somehow, by accident, I went out, to check on something, and I met about 3 or 4 customers. I asked them, this is the option. Do we go this way or this way? They say, this way I have more choices. But we're saying you go this way. Any business, and you started even business will collapse. That's the first disaster. To force people. Right. Last week, we had about Mombasa Port. Told to do this. Now they say people have choices. If you ask today and ask all of us, 5 of us, if you want to open an account with a mobile, which one would you open with? They'll tell you Safaricom. Why? Because it's efficient. I want value for my money. Because it's hard getting that money. So I don't want to go to support certain infrastructure which are bureaucratic. And it's a very interesting narrative in this country. If you look at telecom, and I've been doing some work with the CA in terms of their strategy. CA is a regulator, which by extension is a government creation. And therefore they're supposed to regulate telecom, Safaricom, Airtel. But you go to Safaricom, who is the highest investor in Safaricom?
The government.
It's the government.
It's the government. If you now to telecom is a creation of government. And then here you go. The government is telling us that we don't need this monopolist or this somebody controlling the economy, but I'm the highest investor in that company itself. Because they see what they get. A story be told I hear. They even ask for it, some money in advance for Safaricom. So with all this narrative, we can talk. And I like the book you are talking about. There's something Bill said. Once upon, it's good to think internationally, but you need to act locally. If I go to the Mwananchi, the bottom economy, I don't want to get bottom up, bottom economy.
Why not? Why not bottom up?
What is it saying really? I'm going back to where the products input come from. If I want to medicine, it must be, it won't make that shirt, my brother has been saying, it must be traced to the cotton. By the way, Egypt makes the best cotton in the world.
We killed our cotton.
So what, to me, that bottom is all about that, is investing in the area, growth areas where we can benefit. But the point I'm coming up to here is very important when you look something like what you're asking, really. Let's give consumer or customer a choice. And that's why breweries give you about almost 10 brands of beer. So you make your choice. Is it White Cup? Is it Tusker? And that way, they have a flag called Tusker. They make 10, but all of us know Tusker. I'm given a choice. And that's what the economy is all about.
A choice.
Let me
Okay, so you can wind up on that.
Let me just weigh in on that and agree partly with Wainaina.
Separate these two guys, please.
No, partly. I only agree partly because
We have come from far.
Take a short break. Allow me to just take a short break. When we circle back, we continue with you, if you don't mind.
no problem.
Right, we take a short break. When we circle back, of course, we continue looking at this new development. Ruto seeking deal with Safaricom to disperse cheap hustle